Hello everybody, this is Mark from Altcoin Buzz. Welcome back. We've got some coins to look at again today. Just a little bit of action and updates on some of the big coins, and then we're going to look at some of the coins that you asked about. Please make sure you get ready to leave your comments below on some of the coins that you'd like us to look at, or maybe some thoughts that you might have or questions that you have. I do read through them, I do enjoy them, and I will respond. So let's get started on today. Okay, let's take a look at Neblio. So if we retrace 100% of that first wave, we're now consolidating right at that golden level, at that 618 level. That's the Fibonacci level. That price is right around 450. We've got indicators that we'll be looking at separately from this in just a minute. I've got those notes up for you. The reason I'm going into this now is because the indicators are struggling with each other. So we really have to use the way the chart's looking for us to kind of determine where we want to be bullish or bearish, depending on what happens after this consolidation. That being said, let's get rid of these lines. What's looking like fairly good support right now is this 357 level, which we bounced off of, and it was resistance back here. Pretty solid support line. If it broke through this 1357 or 1350 range, then what's the next logical support from there? That looks like it's going to be at this level right in here. Resistance trended on that line on the back up swing, and bounced off of it here. If we break and we go to the negative side, we're looking at breaking through that 350 range or whatever, then the next support that we're going to see is 1147. If we bounce off of this, if this becomes a support level for us, the 1357, then the next place to look at for obvious resistance is right in here where we hit our head and came back down. So that's an obvious place. But the next place from there, logically, that you'd want to settle in is on the golden level right here at the 0.618 on the Fibonacci. That's 1649, 1650. That's where you'd want to hopefully settle in if we can bounce back off of this. Okay, so here's what you got going on. You've got the directional moving index that's just crossed into a weak bull position. Okay, so the bulls have just started to tick up. It's still a cockfight for control. The RSI, the short and medium term momentum, our relative strength index is on trend with the price action. We're not seeing any divergence there. It's shooting for a lower low, so that's more of a bearish indicator in my mind. The MACD crossed the signal line at approximately a 1513, 1515 price point, and it continued bearish and on a bearish divergence. The OBV, your on-balance volume, is following the trend right now. The Ichimoku cloud spans are converging on each other. They are just kissing right at this point in time. So we have to see which way those end up. It's not a strong indication right now either way. The Bollinger Bands are bouncing off the bottom of the band, and they're making a weak rally to the average right now in the center. So that center line, that might show a little bit of resistance coming our way. And that resistance may come in this area right here that we talked about. That could just be enough momentum into that to, anyway, stall, if you will. The volume is slightly below average, so that'll really help us make a decision here what happens in this potential wedge flag, if that's the way we're going to look at it. Okay, quick recap. 1357, our next immediate support level. And if we break through that, be cautious for the 1147, somewhere in the 1147 to $12 range. If we bounce off of this support line, look for this resistance level somewhere in here between the 1575 and the 1650 range to be your next resistance, immediate resistance level. Neblio. Okay, we're going to take a look at Bitcoin. We have to, not because there's a whole lot going on with it, but we do need to at least touch up on it. So I'm going to make this quick. There's your recent time frame on a 12-hour chart. I've got my final count. I believe that this was the end of the fifth wave, and now we're back on a little bit of a retracement before we start on another wave. So if that was true, this would probably be a nice support level for us, and I'll look at the lower time frames just to confirm that, but then bounce off of this fib level of 91. Well, it's the fib 786, but price level of 91.85 right in there. So come back off of that, probably bounce in between here somewhere, this 9350, 9400 range, come back down, and if we got 100% retracement off of that move, then you're at like 89.65. You could give yourself a range of that kind of action, 89.65 to maybe 8600, somewhere in there. So what I'm looking at is if we cannot hold up this support line, then we'll have to see where we retrace back down to. I'd look at that another time. If we bounce off of this, if this becomes very strong support, then we'll be going back and testing. I don't know that we'll quite make it back to test this level again. I think we'd probably meet it halfway and then correct a little bit more before trying to make another run at it. But that's, we'll have to see how this shapes up. That's just thought number one. Thought number two is we can't hold up this support somewhere in that 9,000 to 8,800, somewhere in that area. We can't use that as support for us. Then we'd have to see if we make a stop along the way down in here. And if we don't, it's kind of clear sailing to get to $8,300. That's the bear side of me. So this, $11,000 range, I don't think that's coming anytime super soon, like in the next few days, kind of soon. We'll see. If something like that happened, then I'd be screaming all over the place and making a quick update video. So real quick, all right, an update on your directional moving index. The lower time frames, the bears are definitely in control over the DMI, and it's starting to show up in the higher time frames as well. On your RSI, the update for that is that actually broke support, so the RSI is broken down through support. The MACD is still showing bearish indications. The update on the Ichimoku is that we started seeing some weakness from the lower time frames starting to show up in the higher time frames as well. The volume is starting to get low and decline, and that's why we're not seeing any kind of real uptick here on these candles. So I think we're in a strong correction right now, a little bit of a retracement before we get on our next run. So again, I'm very interested to see how we interact with this support level right in here. That's the quick update on Bitcoin for you. Okay, so I can't ignore the requested look at Bitcoin Cash. And so we're going to do that real quick here. Let's do a little quick Fibonacci. If this was kind of our last bottom of this last kind of leg up and we go to the top of that, we're right at that 50% level. So that's where we hopefully will bounce off of in here as our first kind of three moves potentially here. And this support level looks like it could hold. We had some resistance back here, not necessarily if we look at off of those lows, but off of these candle closes, we certainly had resistance right in there. So if this is now going to be our support level, that even tightens it up more, doesn't it? What we want to see is a bounce off of this, and then we'll probably come in here and test between the $16.32 and $17.12 range before coming back down and finally correcting somewhere, I would think in this potential 786, one of the golden levels of the Fibonacci, which puts us at $1,410. And we could go in somewhere in between there and $1,293, because obviously we've got this support back here, right? That would be our hopefully our worst case scenario. But you can see we'd have a couple stops along the way if we were to break through this 50%, right? 1, 2, 3 potential stops or slowdowns along the way, or at least some indications of where we should be watching. From there, I mean, if we really were going to get bearish on this coin, I don't think there's any reason to, but if we were to get bearish on this coin, we'd be looking at this previous low that was set back here at 1136. So a lot of stops that we could be looking at along the way before even getting there, and that would be a very, very deep retracement. Now, if we do, hopefully, again, bounce off of that 50, because we all want to see our prices go up, right? Then we're going to be coming back up here and testing this previous high again, potentially, and in that range that we talked about, right? Whether we hit there again, then come back down to correct a little bit less than what we were looking at before, yet to be seen. But those are kind of the two bullish and bearish aspects that I have to this coin right now. Let's look at the indicators real quick. So if we look at the indicators real quick, the directional moving index is bull, but it's softening. It's in bull mode, but it's softening up a little bit. The RSI is in a lower high pattern, and not calling it necessarily bearish divergence at this point, but a lower high pattern potentially forming. MACD is crossing down over the signal above the midpoint, so it's still above the midpoint right now, but it is crossing over the signal. The Ichimoku cloud is bouncing off the 26 period span, so that's looking like it's acting like support right now. The Bollinger Bands are also having price action above that mid-moving average. Not that we've even tested it as support, but it's looking like it could easily hold as support at this point in time. The volume is starting to flatten out. Overall, Bitcoin Cash has some very strong indicators with the consideration that we could be going into a little bit of a correction mode here, right? So it would appear that we could be bouncing off of this support level that we talked about, and then making a little bit of a pushback here before we see, again, potentially a little bit more correction before a next nice big motivation wave. All right, Ethereum, real quick. All right, the same levels that we were looking at the other day. The 740, 738.40 range right in here is a strong support level at this point in time. The 686 would be the next level that we'd probably test if we were to drop down below that. The next support level is 686. So a quick Fibonacci retracement, if this was our last move up from here, we'll use the candle closes right in that range. Then I'm blowing this up. You can see we're right in that 50% retracement level right now, 740 range. And that's where we want to see ourselves bounce off of, right? If we break through that, we're going to be looking at 721 to see if we can hit that and bounce off of it or come back off just like we did here, where we touched the candle wicks to the bottom of that. And then if we come back up, and again, I think this is a correction wave for us a little bit if we're following all the other stuff that's going on. Look at 758, 781 as a place that we could come and try and test. If we do get back up to this $800 level, chances are that could be a double top and we'll correct down back in here somewhere. One of the things about the charts that's worth mentioning is this is not an indicator of what the future is going to look like, right? It just gives us a little bit of a roadmap so that we're not just hanging out in the wind blowing around. Past performance does not necessarily mean future events. However, we use the past performance to try and give us an idea of where things may go so that, again, we have a roadmap. So this way I can look at this chart and at least say, hey, if we break through this level, then the next logical place that we should be looking to see if we're going to bounce somewhere to the upside would be the 721 range. And if we break through that, then I'm looking at the 695 range. It just gives me some perspective on where we could go if this starts breaking through these levels. Then I can also look at it and say, okay, so now what am I looking for targets when it starts bouncing off of this halfway point, this 50% retracement point at the 740 range? Where do I look for it going then? And the obvious point is the last high, right? That is an obvious point that we could look for. But if we didn't make it up to that high, then we could start looking at these targets of the 758, 781, something in there. And then we know that we're going to be coming back down for a little bit to just finish this correction. And then that could be back here at the 695 range in there somewhere. Or maybe we retest back here where we tested those two candles. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Now, let's just see what the indicators are saying. So here's what I'm seeing right now. Our directional moving index is unsure right now. It's moving to the center. The relative strength index, our RSI, broke through support at about the 62 level. The MACD has crossed over the signal. It's looking to find some support in the lower of its range. The OBV is flattening out your on balance volume. And then if we look at the Ichimoku, we're finding support at the higher levels on the 26 moving average. So that's good. That hopefully means that we're going to maintain this level of support that we've got back down in here. Many of you have asked me to go through the Ichimoku cloud and the Bollinger Bands, and I will at some point in time, just so that you get familiar with them. Understand that I'm giving you the information on those indicators so that you can kind of hopefully understand in very, very, very basic terms what they kind of do or what their part in the story is, right? Because ultimately you'd like to have, 3 indicators that you feel comfortable using plus some other things that you may look at. And then when you get kind of an agreement amongst all those things and however you look at them, then you can help make some decisions based off of that. But my primary function here is just to go through what we're seeing on the charts, not to necessarily try and educate you on how to use a specific tool. Hopefully that wasn't too harsh and also makes sense. Long story short, the Bollinger Bands are finding support at the mid-level. So kind of that mid-trading average, we're finding support there. The volume is starting to flatten out. So, not as much steam in Ethereum as I've kind of felt in the last couple days, but nothing that's to a horrible detriment at all. Again, that's just how I'm looking at it. I'm kind of walking you through how I evaluate a coin so I can kind of determine based upon my strategy what I'm going to do. But I'm not a certified financial advisor. Okay, don't take this as concrete information, right? Get familiar with the tools, get comfortable with some things, be an expert at least at a few of them. And then once you do that, you can feel good about listening to some other folks and seeing if you can see what they're seeing, or if you agree with what they're saying, or if you make a wrong kind of thought process, you can go back and look and see if they did, and then learn from them on how they looked at that particular situation and how they use the indicators and all the tools that are available. So anyway, this is to give you a quick update, even though this was pretty long, to get a snapshot kind of for this, short time that we're looking at it. So we'll wrap up Ethereum right now on that note. All right, well, that wraps it up. I hope you got something out of this. And again, I want to thank you for spending your time with me. I know it's valuable. And I'd like to also extend an invitation for you to follow us on some other medium. We've got Altcoin Buzz IO on Twitter. We got Altcoin Buzz on Instagram. We're also on Telegram. We're on Discord. We're on Facebook. We're on the web. We've got our own podcast. You should be checking that out too. Make sure you like and subscribe and make sure that you hit that alert button so you can get all this content as it comes live or fresh to you. And happy trading to you.